All right, I think we're live. So I want to thank anybody who might happen stand run over on this thing that we're doing right now. I got my boy here, number one Marmaduke fan. Please introduce yourselves.
Hey everyone, and thank you, Lio Convoy, for having me on. Hopefully, we'll have like a respect. Maybe we'll have like a respectful but heated debate over the new She-Ra design.
I don't know, man. I think I think the consensus here is that we clearly need to go immediately at each other's throats and start insulting each other, and then it'll be a good stream. If the internet is any indication here.
Yeah, none of your cartoons are good. Only my
Oh
cartoons are
no!
good.
Oh no! How dare you! How dare you!
The funny thing about the whole She-Ra thing was I first look at it and I say, well, that looks okay. I see the point people are making. It looks like a fun show. It looks like something I'll probably watch. And then after about day 2 or day 3 of seeing nothing but She-Ra, I got into 2 debates where I started the debate by saying I like the new She-Ra design, but I don't think everyone who dislikes the new She-Ra design is a harasser or part of a hate mob to destroy the world or anything. And things just descended from there. So that's when I kind of realized, all right. Whatever it is with this new She-Ra design, there's something here worth talking about. So, so Lio, I did this stream today where I drew She-Ra and I talked a little bit about social justice. I call it a summa tangentum video where I just like talk and whatever comes to mind comes to mind. So what I'm looking forward to this is if we have a conversation, maybe you can kind of like contain my long-winded tangents a bit. But that was kind of the prompt. That was the prompt for our conversation today.
Oh yeah. Real quick, want to say hi to Artistic Layman. I see you in the comments there. Artistic Layman, this is number one Marmaduke fan. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, all 3 of us are believers in Christ, so I think we'll get along fairly well overall.
Sweet.
So, going into the conversation about She-Ra, of course, I've given my initial thoughts about it, but when I saw everything going down on Twitter, I was a little bit confused at first because I'm looking at this and I don't see anything outside of what I would expect, honestly, in a new She-Ra. But then I start seeing, like you saw, all these hot take. Looks like a man, looks like a dude. I'm like, when my sister was this age, that was about the figure she had, and my sister is a very loving wife and mother now, but back in that age, sure, she could snap you in half, but she'd go and cry about it later because you hurt her feelings. I just found all those hot takes of she's a dude to be disingenuous and dismissive. I don't. My issue was when I went to talk to people on either side, I didn't get a conversation. I got people trying to reinforce their own cognitive bias. I ran to people on the side of, well, we hate it that we're going on about these darn SJWs, how they're ruining things. And then I'd go to the side that likes a new cartoon, and they don't know anything about the original She-Ra either. And they're like, oh, all these men are pigs. And I'm just like, can we not even talk anymore? Can we not discuss this?
Right. Everything immediately goes to invective, and you can't even have like a conversation, because it'd be interesting to have a conversation about, the design of She-Ra. That's part of the fun of animation and comics, is we get to debate things like the power of the characters or the art and design of the characters. But sort of as the culture war has creeped into this, now suddenly any of these conversations, it immediately degenerates to not Nazis came up in one of the conversations I had with an animator about She-Ra, and it was out of the blue. So I think you and I can definitely, because one of the things I talked about in my live stream was you made some really good points in your video responding to the hot takes on the topic of animation and variety in character design. It's not the most important thing for a heroic character who saves the day that they that their body matches a classical ideal, like from Greek sculpture. But for lots of characters like She-Ra or He-Man or Thundercats, they do have this idealized body type where all the cats and Thundercats, the boys are very masculine. Chitara, but by idealized I mean like a Greek sculpture. The Greeks were obsessed with mathematics, so it's like every part of the body is designed with this sort of harmony in mind. And even Thundercat and Thunderkid, they're prepubescent. They're prepubescent. It'd be weird to talk about them sexually, but they're designed like idealized youths. I really connect it with my history studying art and drawing these kind of things. Like they put you down in front of the Greek torso, you sketch the Greek torso. So that's how I look at a lot of fantasy characters, and I think that's the appeal of a lot of fantasy characters. I think we get in trouble when we sort of, as a knee-jerk reaction, say, new She-Ra, this is proof of the SJW apocalypse. But even though I say that, I do kind of sympathize with the people who are making that connection, because I do think I don't want to say that I think that the new She-Ra is an SJW character without knowing anything more about the creators, but it wouldn't surprise me if the creators learned from social justice warrior types in their training. I guess that's what I'd call my moderate position on the whole new She-Ra debacle.
All right. So before I get into the nitty gritty here and go through a little bit of the history of the brand, I have to ask, you said you got into it with a Disney or DreamWorks animator. Who was it?
It was, she worked for DreamWorks and Cartoon Network. I don't know. I don't think she was high up the rung or anything. It was like something Snod. I don't know. I don't want to make this about her in particular. I mean, the whole thing about it was it started out as kind of a nice, friendly conversation about debate, and then she brought up like Nazis. I thought just kind of as a way. She wasn't calling me a Nazi. She was saying people on your side have this Nazi problem, and I just didn't think that was appropriate for a debate about the design of a character aimed at little girls in a cartoon. So I said, all right, I think that we've reached the end of this conversation. But
that's fair. I don't know exactly what your age is, but by the way you sound and with the knowledge you have, you sound like you're probably in your late 20s. I think Artistic Layman's probably older than me, so he might remember. But here you have to go back to and look at the original source material for all things. So with She-Ra, you have to go back even a little further to He-Man. Have you gotten the chance to see the documentary of the toys that made us?
I haven't. No.
Okay. I know you probably have Netflix, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Whenever you get the chance, look at the toys that made us and find the He-Man episode. They have an entire episode dedicated to how He-Man became as a concept in Mattel. So you had go ahead.
So you did your video on the history of the Thundercats, but He-Man actually did begin as a toy concept. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. It began as a toy concept, but even back before it was a toy, the gentleman who created He-Man, or one of the men attributed to the creation of He-Man, was really big into fitness and bodybuilding. So when they decided to make a new action figure, he wanted this really stacked dude. So like you were talking about Greek sculptures and studying mathematics, he did something similar and created this huge, muscly barbarian dude that eventually wound up evolving into He-Man, right? So you have the He-Man action figure produced by Mattel in the early 1980s. Then in 1983, they commissioned Filmation to make a cartoon on it. Originally, it was going to be a special, but they decided to stretch the budget just a little bit, to create a syndicated cartoon that they can play daily, right? Because this is right after Ronald Reagan deregulated cartoons in the 80s, where you could use them to sell things. So that He-Man was the big boot that kicked down that door that started making all these other companies think, oh, I should make a cartoon to push my product. Unfortunately, other properties in the 80s get saddled with that stigma, even if they may not fit that bill. But going on, after He-Man was created, if you ever look at the toy line, I mean, if you ever go into a vintage toy show, or you probably go to a Comic-Con or two, find a toy table that has He-Man toys and take a look at every single one of them. They all have one specific type of body, different types of limbs, and different armor, and maybe occasional different heads and different colors. So working with that concept, and because Filmation, ran by Lou Scheimer, by the way, they did Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids, a whole slew of different things, a very pro-social company by its nature. Lou Scheimer wanted to keep all of the animation for He-Man in America. because at the time, a lot of other animation companies were, going to Japan or Korea to export and import their animation because it was cheaper. But Lou had a very specific vision, and he wanted to make sure his animators were well paid, and he wanted to make sure it was all in America. So what he did was, for every character or every movement, it was rotoscoped. And
I
on
didn't
top of
know
that, if you ever sit down, I don't know if it's still on Netflix. I think He-Man might still be on Netflix. Just sit down and watch 2 or 3 episodes and watch how they move. The way the characters move in those cartoons is very realistic because it was rotoscoped.
It's something Bruce Timm has talked about is, in the old Fleischer Superman cartoons, because of the rotoscoping techniques, they pick up little gestures of the actors that an artist might not think to do. Like if an actress stood up and straightened her skirt, then that ends up in the final animation. And you might not necessarily think to do that if you're just animating it straight out of your head, because it's all extra work.
Yes, but if you go on and you notice and you actually pay attention, not only does He-Man move in one specific way, but if you were to overlay, there's one specific scene I have in mind of, it's got a top-down camera, and He-Man's running down a hallway. And you see this scene multiple times throughout the series, but you also see the same scene with Skeletor. And what they do is they take the same rotoscope, overlay, and they draw Skeletor on top of it too. That's why every character, with the exception of side characters or whatnot, in He-Man are jacked, because they're working off a rotoscope and they're working off of repeated frames to try to budget properly throughout the series.
Now, how jacked was their model that they rotoscoped off of?
Oh, dude, he looked like He-Man. Let me see if I can plug that in the chat here.
They may not let you share a link in the chat. It might be worth trying, though. Oh, I see this myself. He-Man actor?
No, because you're going to get his voice actor, or you're going to get Dolph Lundgren. You're probably going to get Dolph Lundgren. I mean, that's close.
I think I did get a voice actor. That's interesting to me. So yeah, I'm like a total fake geek guy on He-Man. I think my older brother was into it, and then I think my parents videotaped one episode of a reboot of He-Man from the 2000s, but I never got into it. But I'm kind of, as I've rediscovered Thundercats, now I'm kind of interested in rediscovering other properties from that era.
There's properties up. I can't on if I can find it by the time the chat ends. But here's the thing: like you have all that going on now. When they commissioned She-Ra to appeal girls, what they did was the same concept. If I were to give you an image, and of course I don't know how to do this on screen, of Teela from He-Man and She-Ra from Princess of Power, the body structure is the same, the animation, because it was rotoscoped all off the same model. If I were to give you an image of all of She-Ra's main cast, the powerful women in that show and figure, that wasn't because they wanted, it wasn't because they didn't believe in women having different figures. That's because they are trying to keep under a budget.
Right.
Female characters I could think of that different type was who was the little witch character, and the only black character in She-Ra.
Hey, Lio, some of your sentences are cutting out. You might want to unplug and plug in your mic real quick.
That better?
Think so. Yeah.
All right. Anyways, what I was saying that differentiated in body type of the main cast was Madame Raz, who was a short, pudgy witch lady.
Yeah.
And Neotessa, the only black lady in She-Ra, the original series. So let's see here.
So due to budgeting reasons, that's one reason why there are such similar body types across the He-Man characters.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Which could feed into the whole body type diversity or body positivity debate, because when you now have a budget today, you could theoretically have a budget to have a bit more of a variety of characters and not necessarily reuse the same character model over and over and over again. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, so I think that because DreamWorks, I think that they're going for different body types because number one, their animation allows it, and number two, it can appeal to a larger group of people. As childish as it might seem, there are times where you see a character on screen as a kid and like, hey, I kind of look like him. I like this guy. He's gonna be pretty rad. So I think that they're making an assumption, not out of knowledge of the franchise or the animation industry, but because it seems like the main reaction to get at this point is just to be outraged out of nowhere and immediately start fighting each other on Twitter on make believe points at this junction. What do you think?
I think it's true that Twitter puts a megaphone on the discussion. So what could have been like just sort of a neutral, hey, isn't this interesting kind of discussion about She-Ra's design, it instead became a culture war point. And but the left helps if the right had a knee-jerk negative reaction to the new She-Ra design, then the left helped amplify the volume. So then the volume keeps getting amplified back and forth. Now, the reason I say I'm sympathetic to the social justice is She-Ra potentially a social justice character argument is one way to look at it is to focus on just She-Ra. And you could say, well, what's wrong with She-Ra being a teenage girl? Absolutely nothing. Teenage girls can be great protagonists for great heroic stories. I think it's when you so this is where the question of confirmation bias comes in. So that's why I'm not so quick to say I'm 100% positive this is a social justice agenda, just because I'm looking for examples of it everywhere. But if we zoom out, we can see examples of what looks like a political agenda. And I think the best illustration for that might have been the Powerpuff Girls reboot, where Cerebellum's character is dropped entirely, and their teacher, Miss Keene, her breasts are literally gone. And it's not like it's a big deal. I don't remember ever looking at Miss Keene as a kid and saying, "Oh boy, Miss Keene has big boobs. That's so great." But you notice when a thing is different because the human brain is kind of trained to notice differences. So then you ask, okay, well, why are Mrs. Keene's breasts gone, and why is Cerebellum missing entirely? And so there could be any number of reasons. Like maybe corporate just said, we don't like these. Maybe they think, oh, Cerebellum, she's kind of the whole point of the character is that she's kind of a smart woman who's also kind of a boob joke. So maybe they don't want a boob joke in their reimagining of the Powerpuff Girls. Maybe they were scared of parents being offended. But I tend, because I went to SJW art school and I kind of heard them give the big spiel about male gaze theory and such, I tend to see a lot of things through that lens. So my guess would be that the reason you see characters like Cerebellum disappear in the Powerpuff Girls is because that's perceived as a sexist stereotype pandering to the male gaze, and you have to cut it out to avoid the problematic elements. So then the question is She-Ra a new example of that? And maybe she is, maybe she isn't, but it looks like there's a pattern of characters who I don't know, of big-breasted characters becoming no-breasted characters. And I don't care about the breasts on characters. I care about characterization, but it still would bother me if this trend is happening. So the trend I see is from big breasts to small breasts, from male characters, if they're gender bent, they're transformed into female versions of the character, from Caucasian characters to black characters. Now, there are lots of great reimaginings of characters. I love the version of Aqualad for Young Justice, where he's not the same character as the old Aqualad. They created a new character. They made him the new Aqualad. He's black, but he's just a solid, great character. So they created something new that is very interesting in its own right. So I don't think people have a problem with diversity or changing up characters at all. I think people are worried about the politics of social justice, and they're worried about that creeping into cartoons like She-Ra. And I think that's what leads people to kind of have the knee-jerk bad reaction to She-Ra before they see it. So even if I don't agree with the hot takes, I sympathize with the concern behind the hot takes.
Well, I can understand having concern, but I think at some point we're all supposed to be adults here. Uh, Calm down. Not you, clearly, but some people just need to calm down. Stop trying to be the first guy out there to have a comment. Digest it a little bit and think about what you say before you say. Because I don't know if you're a fan of the quartering, but that dude made a complete mule of himself, despite what his fans said.
Well, the quartering, he got his start in Magic the Gathering, and I don't watch his channel that much, but as I understand it, he essentially had his life ruined by social justice warriors. So for him, there's a personal stake in the game. Like the more social justice warriors have hurt you personally, the more heat you might want to bring to the fight, and that wouldn't like be an excuse for jumping the gun on your commentary. I just understand why certain people get hot and bothered about social justice warriors. Is for some of them, it's more than just like a debate over politics. For a good chunk of people, they have had this negatively impact their family or their life circumstances. I mean, I don't know about you, but I was kind of vaguely interested in politics before I went off to college. And then it's when I'm in college and I sort of experience firsthand that I say, oh my gosh, there is some real insanity to this political world that they're exposing kids to. I don't know if I like this. So it's sort of the personal experience aspect that makes you passionate about a subject, I think.
Well, here's my issue when it comes to the quartering and whatnot. All right, so the quartering, he's had a rough time. He's had, as you say, his life somewhat ruined. Well, here's a bit of an anecdote because I tend to convey things in a very primal way. I've been part of a HEMA school, which is Historical European Martial Arts.
Oh, sweet.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. At least it was, but that's a story for another time. There's this one gentleman that I loved fighting against before he moved. His name's Sam Street. Phenomenal fighter. Well, because he's a phenomenal fighter, one day I'm training with Saber against him, and we're going back and forth, and that dude is eating my lunch. Like he is smacking me left and right. So in my frustration, I see that his leg is open. So I swing down to nail him in the leg, and right as I get ready to connect, I look up just in time to see his sword come crashing down onto my helmet. This man hit me so hard and so fast that we were using nylon sparring swords. It burnt the nylon.
Wow.
So what I'm seeing with the quartering doing something like this is he wants to hit them so bad that he leaves himself so open and gets completely annihilated.
That's an issue of strategy. Like, if you get so fixated on breaking down the social justice warriors that you lose sight of, whether you've got your ducks all in a row before you have your say, you open yourself up to criticism. Maybe one problem is with this whole issue is we potentially have something where, like, I believe there are objective rules to art. I believe that there can be a subjective reaction to art. You will resonate with a different type of story or a different type of cartoon or a different type of art, but we can still measure things in art. We can measure how intense a color is. We can measure how wide a shape is. So for something like She-Ra, when he says, I don't like the new She-Ra, why can't she be like the old She-Ra? What I hear him saying is that he misses a certain type of character he feels is missing. So what I think he's missing is sort of this hyper idealized fantasy ideal. And I kind of used J.R.R. Tolkien as my illustration of this, where the hobbits are very, simple, folksy types, but the great race of Middle Earth are the elves, and the elves are pinnacles of beauty, the pinnacles of wisdom. They live for millennia, and the orcs are a tortured race. And what I think it is so important for fantasy storytelling to have that I'm worried that young artists and young storytellers aren't going to be able to do that if social justice warriors get their way. So when I hear the quartering talk, even though I disagree with them in kind of like my final estimation on the show, I like the look of the new She-Ra show. The reason I sympathize with the quartering is I think he's afraid that shows like He-Man or Thundercats or even the Lord of the Rings, those won't be possible if we imagined we lived in a world where social justice theory came to dominate. And because it's so abstract and weird, this was something I was trying to get at in my live stream. It's so weird trying to read like actual social justice thinkers try to describe what it is they're after. They're all over the place. And I think that's a reason why the political discourse gets so heated and so confused so fast. I don't think that many people know what it is that a artist who's for social justice is supposed to do. Like, are you supposed to draw your girls 100 pounds or 200 pounds or 300 pounds? Like, how fat do I have to draw my character before I have a good body positivity, all bodies are beautiful message to my art? So I get, when I heard you kind of, I consider it a roast. You know, my boy Diversity in Comics, he loves to roast goofy comic books, and he can take a roast as well as he can get a roast. So I have no problem with you roasting the Quartering or Diversity in Comics a bit. For me, that's part of the fun of YouTube. But what is your experience with social justice? Because you've obviously interacted with social justice warriors. Did you ever?
Varies. It varies. Like a lot of things, especially political, there's a massive spectrum. You have people that are active in their communities. I guess the old comparison of I'm more likely to deal with people who want to build a ramp to help a man in a wheelchair than somebody who wants to tear down stairs because people can walk up it and the one guy in the wheelchair can't. But I have had to interact with people of the latter mindset occasionally. And it's just like trying to get through to anybody who is extremely sold on their own self-righteousness. It's nigh impossible. And so I try my best not to interact with those type of people.
Right. And so people are starting to experience this in our daily lives. You know, we're sitting around talking about comic books, we're sitting around talking about animation. And then suddenly this new like set of terms and language makes its way in. Suddenly the new people, they want to talk about male gaze in He-Man, or the objectification of women in Thundercats, or themes of patriarchy in old Marvel comics. So this is I've been made fun of before for talking about SJW Art School so much, but it's kind of the focus of my channel. So my working theory, kind of the thing I'm trying to explore with my channel, is I have this theory that most of these problems that we're having in, you know, pop culture, where we're just trying to talk about cartoons and comic books and movies we like, these start in the schools where, just to use art as an example, the history of art was deconstructed by feminists. They look at the history of Western art and they see nothing but, you know, evil, colonialist, capitalist patriarchy. And so they try to advance a new theory of what art should be. And this new theory of what art should be is really weird. It's like, you know, blood on the walls dripping down to make a screaming face, or political posters where you show up with a political sign at the rally and then you put your rally sign in a museum, and that's your work of art. It's a really bizarre, strange, postmodern, nutty world that most people, even people on the left, I've met very few people, even on the left, who like postmodern art. But it's like the ideas from this little clique of super eggheads has trickled down to normal people, and those are the people that we meet on Twitter. So it's not like they're Marxists or anything. It's not like they don't even have to be like dyed-in-the-wool radicals who do nothing but read left-wing literature all day. All they need to do is have a certain set of beliefs, like male gaze is wrong, the patriarchy is bad, and then if they believe that firmly, then they're going to want to debate with us, because people tend to want to debate for what they believe is true. So, you know, you and I are Christians. We want people to come to know Christ. So that's something that's important. That's something that's important to us. I think that for a social justice warrior is slang, but I think it's okay. It's okay to use the term for a social justice warrior, for kind of a young, naive leftist. Their leftist politics is what they hope to bring to the world, to bring about peace and change and hope within the world. Therefore, they're passionate. Therefore, it's very hard to get through to them if they disagree with you.
Well, here's my thing, and my standard for anybody on any side of any table is this: if you put forward a statement, a claim specifically, I'm all for it, but back it up. Let's talk. Let's have an exchange of ideas. If you want to tell me about the male gaze, all right, tell me about the male gaze. Let's have an exchange of ideas. The problem I'm having on either side, and I had this, I'll regale you in a humorous conversation I had earlier today, is uh, I had somebody tell me, uh, well, I don't like the new She-Ra. Okay, that's fine. Why? Well, because of these SJWs and they're pushing an agenda. And like I said in my video, do you know who James Etalk is? He's the dude is legendary within the community. And if you're into Masters of the Universe or Princess of Power, you know who that man is. And he's never once pushed any sort of agenda. So his response was, he should know better. Why should he know better? You're giving me nothing here. Talk to me. But instead of that, we devolve into other nonsense. And I get that on both sides. If somebody says, everybody who complains about this new She-Ra is just being a sexist pig, how are they being a sexist pig? Talk to me. Who are we talking about here? Are we discussing an individual? Are we discussing a group? But I don't even get that. I get platitudes and then being ignored when I'm asking a question. And I consider that a form of cowardice, and I can't stand cowardice. Mm-hmm. If you have an idea, if you have an opinion, talk about it. Don't be scared to have a conversation. Don't be scared that if because you threw something into the ether, somebody had a question about it. That's inane to me. I was on Facebook today, and I was on one of the Thundercat groups I'm on, and some dude posts a video, like super crazy conspiracy level video about how Thundercats are anti-black culture because Mum-Ra is a villain and Jaga is some sort of politician from the 1300s, and it's all this other crazy crap.
Oh, wow.
I said, where's your evidence for this? Well, you would know if you know this series. I'm like,
wait,
oh.
Okay. Is it because Jaga has that pointed helmet? Was that what he was attached to?
No, mostly the beard and the sword. The fact that he had a sword and a beard. So I find out I've seen one of this guy's videos before where he tried to do a takedown about how Thundercats is of the occult and all this other crap. And firstly, I've heard that argument before. I heard that back in the freaking 80s with
right.
Turmoil in the Toy Box, Deception of a Generation. I've heard that. But I've never heard it from this side. And it got to the point, the dude started raging about Yakub.
Okay, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. So it's this kind of theory that the biblical figures were all black, right? And that that a scientist invented white people, right?
Yes. So at that point, we went on for 2 hours. I'm like, you got that evidence yet? And he is doing as much as he can to avoid that. He is creeping my Facebook profile. He literally wants to fight me IRL. So I send him my address just to see how dumb he is.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's not my actual address. It's where I used to live. I just want to see if he was that dumb. But so he is desperately trying to avoid it. So at this point, I'm like, dude, I spent the last 3 hours slapping you. I spent the last 3 hours making an absolute fool out of you because I like to poke the idiots sometimes too. And I see you do that on Twitter too, and that's fine. But it's like at this point, dude, you're just boring and you're embarrassing yourself. So tell Yakub I think he's a weakling and bye. So if you're going to make a claim, especially one as bizarre as that, don't sit there and put the onus on the other guy to prove what you said.
That I've interacted with a few, I think, Black Hebrew Israelites in like real life street preaching too. And what's interesting is how important meme culture is to their theology. Like they'll get an old illustration of King James and see King James was black. The King James Bible was created by black kings of England or something. That they'll always just have like their memes ready to go.
Oh Lord. So I just want people to be able to articulate, talk, engage. Don't just throw your opinion into the ether and be bewildered when somebody has questions about it or challenges it. I don't understand that.
Well, that used to be kind of a critical feature of YouTube. You even used to have this feature where you could literally post a reply to someone and it'd be like marked as a reply by YouTube. And I think maybe with Twitter, we've now gained, people don't understand what Twitter's supposed to be. Like they think it's supposed to be like Facebook where they post pics of their family or something. It's not supposed to be like a private outlet for you to express your opinions, like you're sitting on your porch. Twitter is like a public notice board where anyone can put up their opinion or their poster. And of course, all public notice boards look like crud, and they're full of graffiti and porn or whatever people want to slap up on a notice board. They can slap it right up there. And so that's the way you have to look at Twitter. It's a garbage dump, but it's a garbage dump where you can also meet some interesting people and find some interesting things. True, and get your finger on the pulse.
That's one way I found you. I want to go ahead and address that chat real quick. For no good reason. Yeah, I think it's best you not be in this one, simply because I think you just sort of be sitting in the background. And of course, Samurai Makoto says that he agrees about the new PPG. We have Calidor. Now, Allspark TV, that's for a message board I've been part of like since day 2 back in 99. It's a Transformer message board. So this man right here knows exactly what we're talking about concerning demonizing these cartoons and declaring them to be a cult, because he lived through it too. And we have Sister Hipster. Let's see, deal with those. I have Mormons come to my door sometimes. That's always a riot. And of course we have Calidor, Allspark TV, saying the only true deity is Picard. No, sir, that is incorrect. We believe in Crom in this house. He lives in the mountains.
I remember hearing about Crom Kruick, I think, in Adventures in Odyssey. Did you ever listen to that Christian radio show growing up?
I did, but I think we're talking about a different Crom, though.
Different one. All right.
Crom is Conan's patron deity, from Conan the Barbarian.
Oh, and that isn't the same pagan deity?
No, Crom in Conan is completely fictional.
Okay.
Like it's an invention of the gentleman who made Conan. Oddly enough, he was born and raised here in Texas, but Crom was just a man that in Conan was elevated to the level of deity because he knew the riddle of steel. So I use it as sort of a meme that Crom. If you ever watch the original Conan movie, which I would watch in sections specifically because there are things in it I don't care for, but it's a really good action adventure movie. It has Arnold Schwarzenegger in it, so obviously that's good. And I say this about the movie. If you want to be a proper man, it teaches you some very valuable lessons. It teaches you to ask for directions. It teaches you what is best in life, and that is to crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of your women.
Yep.
But there's one thing Conan teaches you I do not recommend. Do not pray like Conan prays. And if whenever we're done here, go look up on YouTube Conan prayer to Crom, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when you listen to that.
I watched that movie last year, I think, and I'm forgetting that scene.
And of course,
I'll watch it after we talk. Yeah.
But no, it's something along the lines of, Crom, I never prayed to you before. No one knows, even you, if we are good or bad. But battle pleases you, Crom. That's what I meme when I jump into things. Battle pleases Crom.
Yeah. I got into it because Genndy Tartakovsky mentioned Conan the Barbarian as one of his inspirations, and I love Samurai. I love the art of Samurai Jack so much. I said, well, if Genndy likes it, I better go check it out. And it was a fun action movie. I could see some of the influence.
Well, the thing is, within the American zeitgeist, Conan is the granddaddy of most of our fantasy.
Yeah.
Between that and Lord of the Rings, those are two major pillars of Western fantasy genre. Conan's old enough. Actually, he's so old, he predates Superman.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really? So he goes back to the Pulp Fiction days.
Yes. In fact, that's exactly where he goes back to.
Wow.
Yeah, it's wild. Like, what is it? A quote from the book. He sat in the courtyard listening to the politicians and the theologians, and after many hours, he had come to the conclusion that they were all quite mad. So I can identify with Conan. It's like too much talk, not enough battle axes.
There's a good sense of humor to the writing style. I love. I haven't read much Pulp Fiction from that era, but I love when I read old stuff when something kind of sounds antiquated, or it's just like an old-fashioned way of saying something, but you still identify with it, and you say, okay, people in 1930 were just as silly and fun as people are today.
Yeah, there's some audiobooks for Conan too, if you ever get the chance.
Nice.
I do a lot of driving for my job, so of course if I'm on the road, I listen to YouTube, or I listen to music or audiobooks. So that's where most of my YouTube interaction comes from, because the entire reason I heard the diversity in comics and the quartering was because it popped up while I was driving, and I'm driving like, oh my God, this is ridiculous.
Right. Now, you encountered diversity in comics recently. I'm guessing you encountered him before you encountered me, probably, or did you find
I've
him
heard
through me?
I've heard of him through God, what was it? How did I hear about that name? Somebody, I don't even remember who it was, but just randomly on YouTube, somebody had mentioned. Actually, no, I remember what it was now. This was in a Facebook group about comics that I follow, and apparently one Marvel writer had in it, or kind of underhandedly threatened him, and it became a major debacle. So that's how I've heard the name. So that's where I know where he came from. But he needs to, if he's talking about comics, he needs to stick with comics. He really doesn't know much about cartoons.
There's kind of like an in-joke amongst diversity in comics fans, is that whenever he talks about anything that is in comics, we all make fun of him, and he loses subscribers. So the diversity in comics channel is very much, it's almost like a big family where we're all making fun of each other, and we're all making fun of him, because it's very much, it's sort of almost like a strange, inspiring story, his channel. He starts out with like an iPhone talking about, how he once wanted to be a Marvel comic artist, and talking about like the details of comic art in a very well-read way. He's someone who clearly has read his comic books over the years. And then over time, he like explodes in numbers, and I'm so happy he achieved success, because pros did everything possible to shut him down. Yeah, but that doesn't mean I agree with his opinions on movies. He liked The Last Jedi when he first saw that. So.
Whoa! Now that's just too far. That's just too far, man. We gotta torch his house and steal his horses, and then punch them. That way we can all be like Conan.
Something this maybe ties in with what we were talking about earlier, because I was saying, like, I didn't jump on the hate She-Ra train, but I still see how you could connect her to social justice. So something Diversity in Comics has done is, as he reviews, like maybe like 10 comics a week, almost, he'll just sort of point out, how the character is drawn. And he makes a really persuasive case by doing that Marvel is deliberately trying to make certain female characters masculine, and make certain masculine characters feminine, just because he finds so many examples and calls attention to it. Now, it's not every character. It's not across the board, but it's noticeable. Like one of the jokes that got him in trouble with some SJWs is he calls Carol Danvers Carl Manvers, because it's just creepy. Have you ever noticed that about how new Captain Marvel looks?
No, I don't keep track of. Look, full disclosure here, I'm more of a DC guy when it comes to comics, and even more than DC, I'm a Usagi Yojimbo guy when it comes to comics. So yeah, it's. I try not to delve too far into that.
Okay, so is that just sort of like a natural preference from childhood? You just kind of like dug the DC characters more?
I don't really know. There are some Marvel characters that I really do like. I like Spider-Man. I like Wolverine, if nothing else, because he's such a curmudgeon. How can I not like him?
Yeah, for me, I like, when I was a little kid, I didn't know there was any difference. I think it was maybe when I was about 10 that my brother said, "Hey, look at this. Did you know that there are two companies and that they make completely different heroes?" What? You mean Batman can't be on the Avengers? So, but ever since I've learned that, I've kind of had like equal love for characters from both companies. But I mostly read Marvel comic books growing up, because we had kind of like a nice big bin of used comics that were Spider-Man and X-Men. And then we'd go to the library and we'd get those, cheap black and white Marvel Essentials books where you could read several decades worth of comics, all in black and white from the library. So I'd say in terms of reading, I love a lot of the DC characters, and I've watched a lot of DC animated movies, but probably about 90% of the comics I've read have come from Marvel comics. So I think that's one reason I clicked with the Diversity in Comics channel so much, is that I had left superhero comics for a while, even before like SJW-ism kind of became a thing. I was just kind of like tired of how sort of gritty and dark and deliberately edgy a lot of superhero comics were getting. So I take a break from superhero comics, and then every time I peek in, it's like I'm hearing all of these awful, oh, we're going to ruin your childhood stories, like Spider-Man's marriage being erased from existence. Oh, Captain America being a Nazi. So I think it was sort of like everyone was waiting for a guy like Diversity in Comics to exist, just to kind of point the finger and laugh at how ridiculously Marvel Comics has been treating a lot of its characters. And that it definitely was the opportunity for me to meet a lot of really interesting people on Twitter and YouTube, because so many people were resonating with what he's doing. And I've now kind of like I've come to make friends with a lot of people who are making comics, who have been reading comics for years. So for me, even when I make fun of Diversity in Comics, I'm still happy that channel exists, just because of how it's been able to bring so many like independent comic creators and animators together on the internet.
Well, when it comes to the Marvel versus DC, I have noticed that Marvel does better at movies, but that seems to be all Marvel does better at in terms of what they do. DC beats them in comics. DC certainly beats them in cartoons. It's maddening. I don't understand why there's such a change. Okay, one of my issues is, of course, they never finished Spectacular Spider-Man. Yep. I understand why, but I don't forgive them. And of course, we had Avengers Mightiest Heroes that got canceled, and then Avengers Assemble, which is, I don't know if you watch any of these cartoons, but it's not as good.
I haven't watched any of the new Avengers cartoons apart from Spectacular Spider-Man. I think I watched one Avengers cartoon movie when I was babysitting, and it was just sort of like, dumb superhero fun. Like they had the Hulk eating a cake at some point.
That almost sounds like Superhero Squad.
Maybe it was like a Christmas special. It was the Avengers were trying to save Christmas. That's what it was.
Oh Lord, you need to watch Earth Mightiest Heroes. That series is fantastic.
Really,
it's the closest thing Marvel's done in terms of quality to, like, say, Justice League Unlimited.
Now, wasn't there some kind of controversy that they were going to have the voice actor on for Spectacular Spider-Man, and then they replaced him with the voice actor for Ultimate Spider-Man?
Yeah.
So that really happened. That wasn't just like an internet rumor. I heard.
If I can recall correctly, I think so, and I think that's Drake Bell, isn't it?
Really, I think so. Yeah, Drake Bell. Drake Bell's now there's yet another new Spider-Man show. They're making way too many of them for me to keep up. But yeah, he was the actor for Ultimate Spider-Man.
And in Ultimate Spider-Man, I didn't care for because it tried to be Teen Titans.
Yeah, and Teen Titans was really conservative with sort of the anime silly reaction humor. Like they did it maybe once per episode, but for Ultimate Spider-Man, it seemed like it was, once per scene, he'd do like a cutesy little wee reaction.
Okay, so bringing this back to talking about She-Ra, there's something I've got to share that's just amusing.
Okay.
Within the He-Man and Pop community on Facebook, of course, you have mixed reactions too, same as on Twitter. But one reaction that I find absolutely hilarious is somebody saying, "This looks too much like anime."
Huh.
And I asked him, "What do you mean?" And they responded, "Well, the big eyes." And I said, "Yes, big eyes are an anime thing." And I posted a picture of Carl Barks' Uncle Scrooge comics.
Right.
Because I'm baiting to see if maybe he knows anything of what he's talking about. So of course they have a meltdown. I'm like, all right, so let me give you a short animation industry history here, okay? What we define as anime now started back in the 1950s with Osamu Tezuka and Astro Boy.
Yep.
Osamu Tezuka was a fan of Carl Barks' Uncle Scrooge comics.
Yeah.
And if you look at them, they're a similar art style. So I'll even get down to say, what do you mean by anime art style? And I'll show an image of Sailor Moon. I said, do you mean this? And then I'll follow it with Fists of the North Star. Or do you mean this? And then I just start breaking down. It's like there is no defined thing. What you're talking about, the goofy chibi things, that is one of the few things anime has that is theirs. but everything else they try to use as a descriptor falls short because it comes from other things.
Now, there's variety in anime and manga styles, of course,
Yeah.
but even though you can tell the difference instantly between an 80s and 90s and a 2000s era anime just by the way the characters look, you can kind of see similarities amongst them. You can see sort of 90s anime by different artists that have similar traits to like the angles of the jaw or the angles of the nose.
Absolutely.
You might, yeah. So I think like in that poor person's defense, I can see things like the simplified wide open mouth or like the very pointed jawline on She-Ra. I'd almost think we need like a new general descriptor for it. It's sort of like America anime or whatever.
Well, here's the thing: the word anime, it's a colloquial. It's not even a real word in terms of how we use it in America. The Japanese the word anime, of course, was coined in Japan, but it's short for animation, which is how they say animation.
Yeah.
We only use that as colloquial here to define animation that comes from Japan that was created, conceptualized, and produced for a Japanese audience. Sorry, forgot to put my phone on silent. Godzilla calling to make fun of me. But so when it comes to defining modern cartoons that have sort of pseudo anime influences, it's it's kind of odd to even do that, in my opinion.
But it's also fun. I think the reason people like to do that is it's sort of fun to try to trace the inspiration of something. So, for you, Tetsuka back to Walt Disney and Karl Barks, it's really interesting to kind of hold the two pictures up and say, okay, I can see a visual similarity between these two guys. And then, I don't know, you go along the years and then you hold up like a new picture and you say, oh, this is something new and different. And then you see anime and manga after that and you say, oh, okay, people are sort of starting to pick up on this style of drawing eyeballs or drawing big muscles. To me, that's almost like an art historical thing where when you look at art history, it's all about who invented what and who was the master of whom and who got to see whose art. And you try to like trace this line from how an idea spread amongst all these artists. So when people are getting fascinated with anime and manga and American Western animation, I kind of see that as the continuation in spirit of art history since the regular art world became obsessed with the avant-garde. The real artists have all kind of moved on to illustration or animation, I think.
Well, here's the interesting thing is when you look at it, when you zoom out and you look at the animation industries, America will do something and then Japan will emulate it. And then America will see that they've been emulated and then emulate that. It's a cycle that feeds into itself. Like almost every single genre, a major genre in Japan was influenced by the West. You have the magical girl genre was influenced by Bewitched.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was the starting point. I really need to just sit you down and like spam you with links at some point of images, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Gatchaman was, of course, inspired by Western hero comics. That's go ahead.
When you think about it, like MacArthur, General MacArthur, kind of had a vigorous campaign of Americanizing Japan. Like you couldn't do samurai stories for a good chunk of time. So it makes sense that there would be like this cultural fascination with, oh, look at all this American stuff. Let's put that into our stories.
Yeah. Just to talk to the chat here for a minute. I agree to a point. Allspark TV. It can be an insult, mostly from people who don't really understand in general what entails anime. And there's a lot I can talk to about that, but going on, Shelly D, make She-Ra a demisexual trans tiger. You see, that makes me sad because there was somebody who did that to themselves years ago. They got a bunch of facial reconstructive surgery to make themselves look like a tiger, and that person wound up committing suicide. So thank you for making me sad, Shelly. Allspark TV, The Last Airbender is, to me, the most accurate representation of a Western show created to look like anime. I can understand that, especially how they constructed their fight scenes and storytelling. And of course, Shelly D's gotta bring up the value systems. He's always got to do that. But when you look at it, when you step back and you look at animation, and here's one of the things that I'm not allowed to comment on it on Twitter because I'm still sitting on that week ban.
Huh.
There's one guy who he was just raging about the new She-Ra. Well, the Western animation industry is garbage, and Japan does so much better. They have better frame rates. And I'm sitting here, and I've got my thinking face on, and like, this guy really doesn't know anything. Because when you look at it, do you have any idea how much your standard introduction or rather beginner level animator tends to make an hour?
In the West or in Japan?
In the West.
No clue. What, $20 an hour?
Between 25 and 38.
All right. A little better than I expected.
That's good money. You know how much they do in Japan for any animator for the most part?
Oh, I bet less.
$1 a page.
Oh, gosh. $1 a page.
Yes.
Meaning that they get paid more if they
produce more.
Yeah, produce more. Yep.
And that's why you have so many, how do I put this? When Bruce Timm worked on Batman the Animated Series, sure, he dabbled in other things, but he was working on Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah.
A lot of these other animators in Japan will work on Naruto, but also Bleach, One Piece, whatever else is in Toei's circle. That's why you have a lot of animators in Japan that wind up either dying from overwork or just sheer exhaustion.
Yeah.
Because that industry is horribly underpaid. And another kicker is, if you look at the actual frame rate, most Western animation is animated in between 12 and 24 frames per second.
Yeah.
But Japanese animation is between 6 and 12.
Yep.
So his argument on any level is wrong, objectively.
Right. They're consciously reducing the frame rate to speed up their process.
Yeah, and when it comes to lazy animation, I hate to say this, but Japan's kind of turned it into an art form. Why do you think so many characters have side mouths?
Well, that's why they are able to produce so much of it.
My God, yes.
A manga comes out and boom, there's an anime for it, and they're trying to keep up with the production of the comic itself. Sometimes they catch up with the comic too fast. Like that's what happened to Naruto, I think. It's also interesting to me how it seems like this. Maybe you know more about this, but I use Naruto as my illustration of it. So the original Naruto anime, they added some of their own fresh things to it. They sort of shifted things up, and then somewhere around the time of Shippuden, they started using the manga as the basis for all of the camera shots in the anime. And at that point, anytime I've compared the manga to the anime, it's like shot for shot. They are using the manga as their literal storyboard, and they're almost eliminating the entire storyboarding process for the cartoon adaptation.
Yeah, and that's one thing that Japan does. It's actually really fascinating, completely counterculture to how we do things here. If we want to create a cartoon, for the most part, we have to get a series Bible together. We have to get character design sheets. We have to pitch an original concept, right? In Japan, they create these manga, this serialized manga. They see if that's popular and then say, hey, we have a built-in fan base for this. We can turn this into an animation.
Yep.
And unfortunately, Western animation is behind, at least in that one aspect. Ever since the 80s, ever since He-Man, and I hate to put this on his big, broad shoulders, but that's where it belongs. We've inextricably tied the success of our cartoons to how well product sells.
Yeah.
And Japan doesn't quite do it in the same way we do, because we always focus on toy sales. They focus on charms or manga or advertiser space, and we don't do that. And at some point, our industry is going to have to shift, or it's going to die.
Yep. I think that manga has a character focus. So in addition to creating like the protagonist story, there will be 30 classmates who join the protagonist on his adventures, and everyone's got their favorite waifu or husbando secondary character, and they always put in like almost always they'll put in some cute little cuddly little mascot pet rabbit cat thing or whatever.
Snarf.
Well, maybe that's a Western example. No, he's an important part of the Thundercats. I'm not gonna let you talk bad about Snarf. He's a cool guy.
No, but we did that in the 80s too. Snarf for Thundercats, Orko for He-Man, Cowl or Loki for She-Ra, Slimer for Ghostbusters. It's pretty common in a lot of animation when you actually think about it.
Mm-hmm. A silly character, maybe like almost like an infant, a viewpoint character for an infant.
Yeah. or just because they want somebody who can kind of fill in for the comic relief if necessary.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't always work.
I'm watching my roommate and I've introduced him to the Virtua Fighter anime, and it is really cheesy, but it's really fun. Have you ever seen it?
I have. It's amazing.
It's my favorite video game anime I've found so far. And that's got like Arthur the little flying squirrel, which they clearly just added in. I don't think there's any flying squirrels in the video game.
No, you want a really good video game based cartoon to get some good giggles from.
Yeah.
Look up Street Fighter sometime.
Now I've watched there's more than one of them, right?
I'm talking about the American Saturday morning cartoon.
Okay, so I found an anime of Street Fighter, and I thought it was the same thing as the American morning cartoon one because I didn't know how many of these there were. So I bring home the Japanese one, and it's literally all about them getting beaten up by a Marine. And then Kyle and I don't know, Ryu and Ken say, "Oh boy, we got the snot beating out of us. Let's go travel the world and get in bar fights around the world and see who else will beat us up."
Yeah, I have that one, but the one I'm talking about is just the greatest because M. Bison has some of the most bizarre lines. You have Chun-Li coming after him. "I can't believe you did that. You killed." Yeah, I know. I killed your father. Why does everybody complain about that anyways? I killed my father too, and you don't see me whining about it.
That's the one with yes,
it is.
I remember when that first became a meme back in 2009 or so.
But if we go back again to She-Ra, because we have fun on our tangents, but a lot of the other complaints is the fact that they've changed Bo's skin color.
I did know. I heard people talking about that. So what's your thought on that?
When it comes to changing a character's skin color or ethnicity, I don't know how they're going to handle it in this new series. Because Eternia or Etheria, as She-Ra's on, has such bizarre characters to begin with. With me, it all comes down to a question. Was it integral to who they were as a person? Like you get a kid from a poor neighborhood, a black kid from a poor neighborhood who works his way through racial disparity or financial problems on his way to becoming a hero. That is part of his character. A good example of this, of course, is in a little bit of the opposite is Black Panther from Wakanda.
Yeah.
If you change Black Panther's ethnicity or change this country of origin, you kind of killed the point of the character. But with Bo's attributes are all about the internal things. It's not about how he looks on the outside. The only real complaint I can see is people are like, "Hey, now we have one less ginger. We're on to you."
Right.
So it all depends on how they portray his character. If he has the same level of integrity and courage that the original Bo had, then I'm okay with it. I don't care. It doesn't bother me.
My take on it is almost I have to care about the character first before I care about you swapping up the character's look too much. Because I mean, there's a limited sense where a way a character looks defines who they are. I mean, Samurai Jack looks the way he does because Jenny Tartakovsky came. I think he was a CalArts grad, but he has this school of thought that the visual design of the character relates to the substance of the character. So Jack dresses all in white. He's got his samurai top knot, but he doesn't wear his hair with the tonsure, half bald. So he looks a bit more like a rugged and handsome samurai. He has a rectangle head. He's very instantly identifiable. So if you turn Jack into like a fat Southerner, he's not Samurai Jack anymore. I tried to read these new Samurai Jack comics called Quantum Jack, where the whole premise is like, what if Samurai Jack was a motorcycle gang leader? What if Samurai Jack was a luchador? And after I read like two of them, I said, okay, it's pretty much just like a what if, and it didn't feel like Jack anymore. It's too much of a departure from the character. But for a minor character, yeah, if you want to change him up to, I don't know, cynically, the reason they're doing it is so that they can say, look how diverse we are. Aren't we special? But I want artists to have creative freedom to change some things up and remake some things. I mean, that's Batman. If Batman's character could only be portrayed in one way, like the original way it was, he'd be murdering people and running around with purple gloves, shooting vampires and stuff. Because that was the original Batman. And then we get, the cheesy Adam West Batman, and we get the edgy Frank Miller Batman. I like it when characters get reinvented and reimagined a little.
I do too, especially when they've been around long enough that you can kind of, I don't want to say it like this, but I have no choice. You can say they've earned it. Like for the new Ninja Turtles, I hated the character designs. Then I saw them in motion. I'm like, this works a lot better in motion. And some character designs are like that. But Ninja Turtles, because of how many incarnations it has more than earned the right to experiment a little bit.
Yeah. You're talking about the one that Nickelodeon is just starting to advertise, right?
Yeah, Rise of the TMNT.
Yeah. The animation for that looks exciting. To me, I had that similar response. Like I look at Raphael, and he looks like they made him like a giant tank. They made Leonardo kind of like this skinny live dude. These aren't my turtles, but they look so cool. They look so cool when they're moving. So I can see, I appreciate effort. I appreciate effort, even if it wasn't made exactly for me initially.
But do you know why they did it?
Why did they do that?
For the first time, what they've done is they've taken the turtles and they based all of them off of different breeds of turtle.
Interesting.
So Raph's a snapping turtle.
Huh.
Leo's a red ear slider. Mikey's a soft shell turtle. Or actually Donatello, I think, is a soft shell turtle, and Michelangelo's the half shell turtle. Huh. It's really interesting.
That's a good idea. That's it. So that is good artistic practices there. I try to talk a lot about good habits for artists to have, and that's an example of taking inspiration from nature to add variety to different designs. So that's great. That's something I would use as an example in teaching art. I tutor art with young kids, so that's a kind of story I might tell them as a way of, here's how to think creatively when creating your superhero characters. The TMNT artist did this.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to address the chat. Calidor says he despised the animation style of Samurai Jack and never bothered watching it.
Huh.
And that's fine. I've had a similar issue. The new Spider-Man movie, this coming out, the animated one. I really want to watch it. I don't know what it is, but there's something about it that hurts my eyes.
The jankety style.
It's not even. It's almost like I'm looking at a 3D image without wearing the glasses.
Huh.
Okay. I don't know why, but that physically hurts me. I want to watch it, but it hurts. And then, of course, I tried watching Ruby, and no.
I haven't even watched Ruby yet, but I knew of Monty Ohm's work before he went to work on Ruby, and he was very thoughtful about, like, he used to make these independent animations with video game characters where they'd have an epic battle with a lot of over-the-top choreography. So what's your take on the animation style for Ruby?
I think that for the most part they don't have very good direction, and for an in-house project, as you get better funding and you get better people, the animation improves, whether that be in frame rate or in style. Shoulders don't have edges, and they still have edges. I saw this one scene where all the characters were sitting at a noodle shop, a la Naruto, right?
Yeah.
And it was good. It would have been a really great scene, a very comedic one, where the cat-like character wants to eat a bowl of fish, but the rich, spoiled girl's card keeps getting declined.
Yeah.
But instead of focusing on making it the majority of the animation flow, they focused on making sure the cat girl's breast jiggled.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is what you put your effort. It makes me want to just raise a lot of money to just bring Don Bluth everywhere so he can just slap everybody.
Yeah.
Because it's just so poorly done. And I can't, the fight scenes, the fight choreography in Ruby for the most part's good, especially for somebody who doesn't understand how weapons works. But
all right,
I just can't stand Ruby. I just can't.
There seem to be like whole genres of anime where I've had to say, this doesn't make any sense, but it looks nice.
But how do I put this? It's about conveying that the characters know what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
And again, that goes back again to the She-Ra question and everything. Is, what is She-Ra wearing? And Professor Geek went on, and he kind of defeated himself in his first statement. He's like, if it's fantasy, you can do whatever you want. And then he immediately follows that by saying, well, she shouldn't have to do this. She shouldn't have to wear armor. She shouldn't have to be realistic, but you can do what you want. You can't really make self-defeating statements like that and then kill your own point.
Yeah.
Uh, I think based on the jacket or the clothing that She-Ra's wearing. I don't know if you were you ever in band when you were in school, like a marching band?
My mom was a band geek, but no, I was a theater geek.
Okay. Well, the jackets they wear in band are thick jackets, right? So
Mhm.
even on women, it would have that bulge for the breast and nothing else.
Yeah.
And that's what She-Ra's outfit reminds me of. Now, of course, we don't know what it's made out of. If you ever go back and you just look at the 2011 Thundercat designs, they're armored and they work for what they're supposed to do. I think this mentality that if we keep a design the way it was, we can't ever progress is faulty.
Hmm.
I think it's faulty if you say, well, it's fiction. It doesn't have to be realistic. And then you turn around and criticize how thick teenage She-Ra's arms are. It's kind of self-defeating.
The one thing that I like the overall look of the character. The one thing I just don't like is these shoulder pads, because to me that's the best argument that there's a conscious effort to make her look more like a boy on purpose. Because anyone who's in animation has probably learned the inverted triangle
Mhm.
trick. So if you've learned, I've even seen like kind of like social justice friendly artists explain this trick. So where like she'll say, "Oh, when drawing like your very slender, feminine Bishi boy man, still make sure to emphasize the inverted triangle." And then I looked at the drawing, and it was sort of like that typical sort of pretty boy, I don't know, like Tumblr manga mashup style. But she still got, but she still deliberately emphasized his male, shoulder to groin ratio.
Well,
And I
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
well, so since I think it looks like good animation, since I look at it and say, wow, that looks pretty, these people know what they're doing, then what that means is the character designer knows about, using shape to communicate things about the character. And then they still put these like giant, they're like 80s Hillary Clinton shoulder pads on a pantsuit. Women used to wear those in pantsuits to make themselves look tough and intimidating in the business environment. And we look at photos of them from the 1980s, and they look like they got giant baggy shoulder pads in their suit. It doesn't look that good aesthetically. So
Well, I do have an explanation for you if you'd like to hear it.
all right, what is it?
Okay. Are you able to pull up a picture of the original She-Ra where you are?
I think yes, I can. So
Okay. Go
the
ahead.
one with bare shoulders, original
Yes.
She-Ra.
All right. So look around the top of her top. You see the angel flanges on the end?
Let's see. I see. Okay, yes. So she has angel flanges. Okay, along the top of her torso. Okay.
Okay. What they've done for the shoulder pads is since they've made it a complete top, instead of having flanges, they made it shoulder pads.
All right.
Now, not what I would have done, I'll admit, but there's the logic for why she has these weird shoulder pads that look so bizarre, because they're trying to make sure she passes the squint test. And again, not what I would do, but that's how they do it. And if you don't like the animation style or you don't like the character design, that's cool. There's whatever. Just
Well, I like the style of Voltron, so that's kind of in the positive category for it. And I like the background work. And when you look at something like like a Miyazaki film, they are excellent character designers at Studio Ghibli, but they also just do intense work on those background paintings. Those are those are like not photorealistic, but hyper realistic paintings where these animated characters occupy the world. From what I've seen of the backgrounds for She-Ra, it's not hyper realistic. It's sort of abstract, but still a vibrantly colorful fantasy world. So that's going to help bring life to the rest of the world around the character.
Absolutely. And I forgot, did I ever tell you about the Thundercat connection to Studio Ghibli?
I haven't heard it.
Okay. Back in the 70s, when Rankin Boss did The Hobbit, and then later on they did The Last Unicorn, Flight of Dragons, it was called Studio Topcraft, was the animation company they produced it with. In the 80s, the mid 80s, when Thundercats produced, Topcraft split off into two companies. One was Pacific Animation Corporation, and that's who animated Thundercats, Tiger Sharks, and Silverhawks. The other one became Studio Ghibli. So when Pacific Animation Corporation closed down and sold the rest to become Disney West, a lot of the animators from the original Thundercats became Studio Ghibli employees.
Were they affiliated with Lupin the Third or Future Boy Conan?
There's a possibility. I haven't done too much digging, but I know a lot of the staff on the original Thundercats also worked on stuff like Fist of the North Star. And the person who directed the intro is actually the animation director for Naruto and Bleach.
So you're excited because you think they've got some good talent coming down the road.
I know they do, or rather, they've had the good talent. But I want to address the chat here real quick. Again, if you have a problem with She-Ra's costume, that's fine. It's cool. It's whatever. If He-Man shows up, would he have armor or look like Bo? Here, I'm going to give you guys a really short history lesson here. Okay, Mattel owns He-Man. It was conceptualized by Mattel, created by Mattel. Mattel wholesale owns anything He-Man related. However, when they commissioned Filmation to make She-Ra, She-Ra is not owned by Mattel. She-Ra was owned by Filmation.
Oh.
So when Filmation closed down and sold their assets, it was originally to Deke, and there's a Sailor Moon connection there. It's pretty hilarious, but that for another time. And then Deke closed down and sold their assets to DreamWorks.
So there's never going to be a She-Ra He-Man crossover again.
There might be, but that's legal problem.
Yeah.
So in the new She-Ra, you're probably not going to see mention of He-Man. You're not going to see mentions of Grayskull because those are properties owned by Mattel. But DreamWorks as a whole owns the entirety of She-Ra. Heck, for the Masters of the Universe collectors line, I actually have the new She-Ra and Hordak figures here with me. They just came in today. They had to get licensing from DreamWorks to produce these new She-Ra toys.
You know, so what this reminds me about DreamWorks is it was a few years ago they had their massive employment problem from the box office failure of How to Train Your Dragon 2. Like they were hoping that to pull their fat out of the fire, and they've like just started completely dominating the Netflix scene. They've like they seem to be turning all of their properties into animated films, and they've been buying up a lot of stuff, haven't they?
Yeah. Real quick let's see here. Okay, I'm going to agree with Hipster Sister concerning 2011 Chitaro's outfit. I never cared for it. That's the design I feel like was way too sexual, but again, that's my opinion. To MNDC. No, even in the original, she was an orphan by the beginning of her story because she wasn't aware that Hordak and Skeletor had kidnapped her. So Hordak raised her as his daughter, saying that she was an orphan, and he took her in. So she became the captain of his evil horde that she somehow didn't know was evil. And again, you know, I know you talked about it a little bit, but no, She-Ra has always been a part of a great rebellion against evil Hordak. So
right.
that was another thing from the quartering. He was trying his best to try to turn it into they want to tell off Drumpf. It's like, no, she's always been part of a great rebellion. That's the entire point of her character, was to be the inverse of He-Man, whereas He-Man reacted to evil. She-Ra was proactive against evil.
The only thing I'd worry about though is so like the rebellion in Star Wars was, you know, even though if George Lucas may have intended Star Wars as kind of like a dig on America and like a pro Vietnam anti-America message, I've seen some people interpret Star Wars that way. Star Wars didn't become like a contemporary political thing until hashtag resist, hashtag the resistance. So when it seems like when contemporary people go to see like the new Star Wars films, they then take the symbolism from that and say, oh, this is us. We are the resistance. Trump is the first order. So that's when it gets cringy to me. So She-Ra has a history of being in a rebellion against an evil dude. I just worry that it's like with Harry Potter. You know, there's going to be a group of people who say we are the rebellion, and Drumpf is like guys at Castle Grayskull. But I'm still reserving judgment on the show itself until.
Yeah, I am too, and you know, we'll see how that goes. Groups can identify with a lot of different things, and some of it can be goofy, some of it can be good. Christians, we identify with a lot of different things too, even if it may not be something that was meant for us to identify with. As much as everybody identifies with Lord of the Rings, I believe J.R. Tolkien has gone on record saying, no, this wasn't supposed to be allegory, even though it totally looks like allegory.
Right.
As opposed to C.S. Lewis's, who I'm personally more fond of, who's like, yeah, this is totally about Jesus. Matter of fact, the lion is Jesus.
Right.
Matter of fact, he's so Jesus, at the end, he tells you he's Jesus.
Right. Now, the thing is, though, that Tolkien in the Silmarillion made explicit reference to, what do you call him? Ilúvatar, right? What is Ilúvatar supposed to be, J.R.R. Tolkien, if that is not the Christian God that you have brought into the context of your Middle-earth mythos, down to details of the myth, the creation story of Middle-earth. They reflect the fall of Satan and such. So
I don't know, man. I think Calidor might be right on that. I think it might be Picard. I think that's who it's pointing to.
Oh, okay. Well, Tolkien was kind of interesting because he thought about he and Lewis used to debate about myth. Have you heard of the Tolkien professor?
No, I haven't.
Fascinating guy. He's just a professor who would teach a course examining the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, and he's published his lectures for free on iTunes. And Tolkien wrote a letter to C.S. Lewis with a poem called Mythopoeia, and it is a defense of the value of myth, because Lewis was struggling with the idea of Christians using myth in story because myths aren't true. So why should Christians draw from untrue things if, telling the truth is like a big part of the Christian life? So Tolkien writes Mythopoeia as a way of trying to communicate to Lewis the value of myth. And I think he might have written that to Lewis prior to Lewis working on the Chronicles of Narnia. So they're so fascinating to look at those two together and how they influenced one another.
Well, I mean, I personally would have just gone the route of, well, Jesus talked in parables all the time.
Yep.
But all right, we got Calidor. Don't like Chitara's costume, man. Well, it's not made for you. Well, of course it's not made for me. I don't have the figure for it.
What does that even mean? Okay, I'll tell you what it means. When they say it's not made for you, that is male gaze theory creeping into things. So it was one of the garbage fake news sites. It was like Medium or Vox or something. Men are upset that the new She-Ra design has not been made for them. And what they mean is that busty babes are created by capitalism to appeal to the presumed male gaze and the capitalist audience for it. So I do see trickle down from social justice down to the average Joes and Janes.
No, Hateful just commented. Let's see here. I will not agree with how Rian Johnson and Lucas dealt with. No, absolutely. A lot of these professionals don't know how to be professional. They engage the wrong people, or they spit fire towards the people that they're trying to sell. That's why I'm more fond of Aaron Sparrow and his hashtag "Ask Me About My Customer Service Agenda."
He's fantastic.
He's great. I love it. That's what I told him earlier. Last time he went on a quote unquote TED Talk thread. I'm like, man, every time you pop in, I think it's J.R. Tolkien because it's the freaking Return of the King.
Right. I reviewed one of his comic books that I just picked up on a whim. Right. And I've got a garbage phone that I'm pointing at the comic book while I'm talking about it. And of course I go on my tangent. So at some point I go on a tangent about euthanasia in the middle of reviewing a Darkwing Duck comic. And his comment is like, oh, I love this review. We didn't have euthanasia or politics in mind while working on this comic, but I'm so glad he reviewed this guy. Then I was like kind of embarrassed, like, oh gosh, the guy who wrote this comic book commented on my YouTube video. So he helped me figure out like the whole history of the comics he had published related to Darkwing Duck. And it's entirely because of his professional behavior on the internet that I ended up checking out. He gave me a copy of one of his Darkwing Duck comics. He's so cool. But yeah, it's because of his professionalism that I ended up finding the Darkwing Duck omnibus and start working my way through that. And that is some good storytelling. He gets the character.
And that goes to what he was talking about in a previous thread he had. When you are given a character to write for, an established one, it's not your chance to tell your story with those characters. It's your chance to tell a good story with those characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of my issues with Thundercats Roar. This is a Thundercats cartoon I wanted but these aren't your characters.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my issues with that is if you had pointed all these other shows Cartoon Network's done, and they were all like complete flops, Adventure Time or We Bear Bears or Steven, they were all complete flops, like Steven Universe. Say it was a complete flop. Then maybe I could be like, okay, I can understand why they're doing a reboot. But all these original IPs I just listed are crazy successful. There's no reason for it. But then again, what do I know? I'm a terrible human being, according to random people on the internet, because I don't like a cartoon.
Now this might be interesting. Like, I almost considered doing a video about this, but it's a little too early. Like, what happens if Thundercats Roar is a wild commercial success and kids are just having like Thundercats Roar on all the merchandise? What I think might happen is I think kids are going to pick up sort of the condescension in it. Like, hey kids, I have a magical slicing stick. Like, I think that 4-year-olds are going to know when they're being talked down to, and right. But then again, like Teen Titans Go blew up, and I thought the same thing about Teen Titans Go. I would say, oh, these clips look so stupid. What maybe like the most hyperactive little attention span kid will dig it because it's bright and colorful. But it's continued to season after season make a lot of money. They're making a movie. I've even seen some recent clips, and it's sort of like they've become more self-aware, and they've sort of transformed Teen Titans Go into a solid parody of the DC comic universe. And
matter of fact, that's why it's so successful, to be honest with you. If you were to take all of Teen Titans Go and cut it down to where it's just self-referential humor and had nothing to do with the rest of the DCU, it might last 2 seasons. But because they have an entire wealth of things they can comment and joke about, and despite what people will tell you, a lot of adults watch that cartoon and nothing else just so they can be angry. That's why it gets heavy ratings. It's because they can comment on anything. If Batman v Superman was too dark, so what do? They make fun of Batman v Superman.
Right.
So that's what they do. And that's why they continue to be successful, because it's almost like South Park, where you have fresh content every episode because it comments on topical things. Now, granted, I'm not a big fan of the show. There are certain episodes I love. I love the Night Begins to Shine episodes because I'm an 80s kid and I'm going to. But that's you gotta take a look at things from a realistic standpoint and ask, why are they popular? Because there's got to be a reason for it.
Right. You can't condescend to kids too much, but even if an adult looks at something and says this is stupid, if kids end up liking it and not finding it condescending, that means that the storytellers were able to spark into something that resonated with the young people. So, and I am a big advocate since I've been a tutor. I'm a big advocate of like paying attention to the stories kids tell. If you have kids and they're telling you stories, write those things down. Those are going to be gold when they're grown. But
yeah, that's how Axe Cop came about.
Yep. Oh, yes. I knew you were a smart person. Yeah. Axe Cop is one of the best webcomics ever made, and everyone should go read that now. It is a testament to creativity and just an older brother who cares so much about his younger brother that he plays with his younger brother and he pays attention to his younger brother's stories. And then they shared something wonderful with the world with Axe Cop.
Do you by any chance read any other online comics?
Let me think. I used to read more, but I've been reading mostly like traditional published comics for the past year. I used to read Gamer Cat and Sandra and Wu, and I thought that Sandra and Wu was well illustrated, but it would occasionally just have like a really weird, like children in Kenya are starving comic, and I just thought, I didn't want to read your webcomic to every once in a while just have this sad story appear out of nowhere. But those, I've probably read other webcomics. They're just not coming to the forefront of my mind at the moment.
All right. Well, I'm going to make a recommendation for you.
Yeah.
There's a webcomic called Shotgun Shuffle.
Shotgun Shuffle. Tell me about it.
It is about a very unique girl who finally gets kicked out of her house for being, dumb, and her struggles in life. And it is, in my opinion, one of the best webcomics I have read in a long time. And it's really neat because one of the things I really like about webcomics compared to any other thing, comic or even cartoon related, you can see how the art style, of course, evolves over the years. So the first comic is really simple in design, and the latest comic is just this dude is really upped his game like absurdly. It is currently the only webcomic I do read.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I just clicked first, and I can see there's like a completely dramatic artistic transformation.
Now I'm gonna go ahead and address the chat here. Animation is less about how much money it can make, and more about how little money can be spent to make the cartoon. In some cases, yes. Your average American cartoon, I think, is $350,000 an episode.
An episode?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah, it's 350, and an anime is about half that.
Yeah.
So it all depends. You're never going to know how much a cartoon costs to make until you sit down and actually look at the numbers. Like Transformers Prime, and I know Calidor's familiar enough with that, was about $1 million an episode. And if you take a good look at Transformers Prime, you're going to find out why. And then we have MNDC, Brave and the Bold. I love Brave and the Bold. I especially love their take on Aquaman. In my opinion, that's the best Aquaman. Outrageous. Let's see. Love the Dread comics? Well, of course. I mean, if you don't love the Dread comics, you're going to be under arrest. The new iteration of JLA is also nice animation-wise, but episodes seem to not be connected. Yeah, it's very episodic, that Justice League action. But I enjoy it. I think Dana Snyder is the perfect voice for Plastic Man. I don't know if you're familiar with that voice actor.
Is a woman playing Plastic Man in the new Justice League?
No. Okay. Have you ever seen Aqua Teen Hunger Force?
Oh, I wasn't allowed to watch that as a kid, and I haven't caught it as an adult.
Have you ever seen any of it though?
I don't know. I've seen like them in commercials for Aqua Teen Hunger Force. So that's
Did you ever watch Chowder?
Is he the meatball?
No, Chowder is the. It was back in the I think 2008. Chowder was a cartoon on Cartoon Network about a purple cat who wanted to cook, and all the names of the food were ridiculous.
Oh, okay. I haven't watched this show either.
Doggone it. Well, there goes my catalog of. Have you seen Venture Brothers?
I think I might have watched a few episodes with my brother.
Man, I am striking out on all ends here.
Yeah.
Well, anyways,
I haven't watched. Okay, I haven't watched much like edgy adult cartoons.
Well, I wouldn't even call Aqua Teen Hunger Force edgy so much as inane.
All right.
But he does the voice of Master Shake, who's just a pompous, moronic character. And because of the type of voice he has, he's the perfect Plastic Man. Because he's got that I'm very important voice that mixes with the I am so annoying and Batman hates me voice.
Yeah.
Oh, we got a Dr. McNinja. I love Dr. McNinja. I just wish it didn't end. The webtoons, honestly, I kind of ignore them because I hate their ads.
Right, they are. That is kind of like noticeable whenever you're on line webtoon.
Yeah. And real quick before we continue on, the another one. You're talking about the punchline is machismo, and that's a good web comic as well, but I haven't kept up with it. Yes, I'm glad you watched Venture Brothers, Calidor. I do too. Love it. I'm looking forward to the new season. All right, let's continue on here. Anything else you want to discuss, Marmaduke?
Let me think. We touched on most of what I wanted to. I guess maybe it'd be nice to like kind of like for me to think back on my live stream. Kind of like the way I summed up my live stream is, yes, I kind of see the argument that there could be a social justice influence on the new She-Ra design, but I would rather people focus on like the origins of social justice to discuss social justice rather than immediately like run for the YouTube dollars and make She-Ra what would you call it? Like try to like weaponize She-Ra and make that a moment for an argument about social justice. I think that critics of social justice need to start paying attention to the origins of social justice more, so that we can make a comprehensive case, so that when the ones that are able to be persuaded, the ones that haven't like made it their religion. When they discuss social justice with us, I want them to run into like really well-informed people who know social justice better than they do. One of my favorite Christian apologists, when he interacts with Mormons, he knows the Book of Mormon better than the Mormons do. So he's really able to have a fruitful conversation with them rather than just yell like "you're a moron" over and over again. So I kind of want anti-SJW Twitter to gain enough knowledge of social justice so that we can be fruitful in. I want to defeat social justice.
You want them to be able to intellectually engage these people,
right? While recognizing that some of the people you intellectually engage with are not going to be willing to engage with you rationally. They're going to call you names. They're going to ignore you. You're going to make a point, and then they're just going to shut up and not say anything after you've made an excellent point or just ask them a good question. So the problem is you're asking people to devote some time and energy to gaining knowledge where it's not obvious that it's having a positive effect immediately. Like you'll start engaging with social justice warriors and you won't see any of them like say, "I've seen the light, I'll stop being a social justice warrior." But I think it is good for us. I think it's good for us all if we engage, if we just like engage in good arguments rather than bad arguments. Tolkien would talk about this, where I think Gandalf would say that he sees, more. He sees more value in like the little acts of good, which hold back the darkness of Sauron than even in like the grand armies. So I think that even if you don't immediately see change on a cultural level, it is good for you to have knowledge of what social justice is, so that you can intellectually engage them. Yeah, and don't give up hope if the people you're interacting with on Twitter, if it seems like you're running into a brick wall, because maybe it'll be a family member, maybe it'll be relative or in-laws. There will always be opportunities for you to have fruitful conversations about these things.
I completely agree. And let's see, we got Sheldon commenting in the chat. He says, "I don't need to know the roots of philosophy," which would be like, well, Marxist, I guess. Out of that postmodernist from there onward into the present day. In the case of She-Ra, there's clearly not enough information to identify a SJW influence. I mean, there might be, but there's not enough to say so with any confidence. And that's basically what I'm coming from. I have to wait and see.
That's where I'm coming from, kind of with the caveat that I at least see enough of a parallel between She-Ra's design and male gaze theory that I wouldn't be surprised. Like, what would confirm this is if the creative team came out and did interviews and said, "Yes, it was our intention to do a like social justice anti-male gaze message." Well, then I'd have the evidence I need. I don't have that evidence, so I'm completely open to She-Ra. The thing is, they could even be social justice warriors, and that doesn't mean they can't make a good cartoon. It's just going to mean that there will likely be points where their politics sneak in, and that can be a shame. That can be to the detriment of the cartoon. But talented people still make talented work, and you can still appreciate that despite other negative aspects of the work.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Like even Calidor was talking in the thread. I think the basis people are using directly related to the curators themselves. Here's a question: does anybody know what the political leanings of any of the crew for Thundercats is? I don't. Because they never talk about it. They never put it in their show. And if you're making a good cartoon, even one with good values, you don't have to push a political message. And even if you are, and some of these people are staunchly very left or very right, that doesn't mean it's going to necessarily convey into what they produce. I believe Jim Cummings, for the most part, the voice of Winnie the Pooh, Darkwing Duck, seems center right, whereas Gary Chalk, the voice actor for Optimus Primal, is very much so left. Yeah. That doesn't mean it's going to influence their work, right? So that's what I'm looking at. If they are a political leaning, does it influence their work? If so, to what degree? And if to what degree is it detrimental?
I think it affects writers more than actors and artists. It could affect artists in how you draw a certain character. Like if I draw my enemy with a giant black mustache, that's me using my art to make a sort of political jab. But I think for writers, it tends to come up because I believe that morality is completely key to telling a good story. And it's not like you lecture the children at the end. Here's the moral of our story. children, but just the fact that you have a hero implies that there are, right things that a hero should do, and there are wrong things the hero shouldn't do. And I think my expectation is our culture war over comic books and such, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. But I don't think that it's going to be this bad forever.
Oh man, the fact that you said you don't sit them down and tell them what the moral is, you're going to have fun watching the original He-Man.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they have PSAs. Now for me, that adds cheesy humor.
It's at the end of every episode.
The more you know.
No, it's more of, in today's story, we found out. Here's my favorite, is when He-Man talks about safety. I'm like, dude, you are riding around shirtless on a giant green tiger. I'm not listening to you about safety.
Okay, I've got to show this to you sometime, because this is something that I might be the only one who knows about it. There was like a weird postmodern artist who took old 80s PSA ads and like remixed them to say ridiculous stuff. So it'd be like the G.I. Joe character would come out.
I've seen that.
I've seen that. Yes. That's one of like the few examples of weird avant-garde art I actually.
Stop all the downloading. I love those things, man. They're great.
Right, because they meant it to be like an experimental film, dude, but it actually is very entertaining.
I mean, I think the best example for that for He-Man is, well, the Four Non-Blonde song.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you saw what the SDCC exclusive is for He-Man this year.
What? What is it?
Well, you know the song I'm referring to, right? It's an old internet meme. It's an action figure of that.
Oh, so Mattel did an action figure related to the meme.
Technically, Super 7 did, because He-Man's licensed through them to sell toys. But yes, it is a laughing Prince Adam action figure.
Is he in front of a rainbow?
Yes.
That's great. That's good marketing. I'd get that. Oh boy.
But we're gonna go ahead and close out with something Calidor said, because it's like I told you, some of the lessons from Thundercats really stuck with me. So Calidor is sharing here, Motu, Masters of the Universe, actually gave the message that was one of the most important messages he grew up with, that being adopted isn't something to be ashamed of, but rather proud of. And I agree with that. One of my favorite lessons from Thundercats is better an honest enemy than a false friend. And that's always stuck with me, because that's one of those things, like, this is really, really should be common knowledge, but that's really insightful.
I remember being maybe 13 years old, and I was drawing, and I was just playing Darkwing Duck while I was drawing. And Darkwing Duck says to the villain, no evil is necessary. And then he did one of his alliterations. It was like, you felonious felon or whatever. And then I looked up and I rewound, and I thought, wow. So what Darkwing Duck just said there is that just because you think your evil action is necessary, that doesn't make it right. And to me, that is like something critical. That's critically important. That's what keeps you from justifying killing people in the name of your political ideology. So it is true that you can't just say, oh, these are dumb children's cartoons, they don't matter, why invest time talking about them? They're for children, but the principles they teach have to be informed by the wisdom of adults. And if you don't have that, then we're not instructing young people in things that are important for them to know later in life. Well,
I've always been an advocate of cartoons being able to teach something.
Yeah.
I don't think every cartoon has to be a demonstration of a lesson.
Yeah.
But I miss ones that did, because I feel like that's something in our cultural zeitgeist that's gone missing. And I know that a lot of them were a byproduct of trying to make sure parents didn't freak out about a demon showing up in the episode. Right. But I think it's something important.
Right. Something like Samurai Jack doesn't have a moral to the story, and something like My Little Pony does have a moral to the story. I'd almost wonder if that was a contributing factor to it getting My Little Pony getting its adult fan base. Is they say, oh, it's so cute and cheesy but interesting how it has little morals to the story at the end of the episode. Friendship, friendship lessons, right?
Oh man, it's hilarious because you just said that as Shelly D popped up, and Shelly, he's a fan of My Little Pony. He asked if you're a moral realist.
Am I a moral relativist?
No, realist.
Am I a moral realist? As in, okay, so a realist is someone who tries to like look at real situations in the world, and that informs their decision-making process. So if my principle would be violated, but it's not realistic for us to accomplish it, right? I'm not 100% sure what he's getting at exactly.
I'm sure he'll comment.
All right.
He always does.
All right. Well,
even if it was like last week when he said, "Hey, don't give Thomas money, give me money."
All right. I guess maybe guess if I can guess what he means by that. Then
he just clarified. A realist is somebody who believes it exists in material reality.
A realist is someone who only believes
in an objective sense.
In an objective sense. Well, no, because I'm a theist. So, well, God exists in reality, but I can't like put God in a test tube to demonstrate that. I guess I would be a realist in the sense of, you know, how we have political debates, or debates of philosophy, like for that kind of thing, like looking at the real world and like making logical arguments. I look at that as like the best way to advance anything. I don't know, but then you kind of like bring in like pragmatic problems, like what do you do if someone doesn't care about logic or reality? Do you try to use logic and reality to debate them, or do you have to like stop them? So I'm still not sure. But okay, in an objective sense, and a realist is somebody who believes it exists in material reality in a objective sense. I don't know. I've read a little bit of Ayn Randian objectivism. I wasn't a philosophy major. I was an art major. I tried to read about philosophy in my spare time. So when
it comes to philosophy, I'm far more fond of Miyamoto Musashi and Diogenes. Because he was a prick.
Put some pebbles in your mouth.
Here is Plato's man.
Plato is interesting. I'm not a big fan of Plato's political philosophy in the Republic, but I love Socrates. Are you familiar with Peter Kreeft's Socrates series at all?
I am not.
It is very fun. So Peter Kreeft is like this Catholic professor of philosophy, and most of his books are about Socrates, and he'll use Socrates as a literal character. So Socrates will show up and debate with Karl Marx, but all Socrates does is ask Karl Marx questions, and then Karl Marx answers them as the real Karl Marx would have, and then he destroys Karl Marx. It's great.
I need to look that up. But let's go ahead and wrap this stream up. We've been going for almost 2 hours now because we've been having a lot of fun. I don't know about you, but I've been having a lot of fun here.
Oh, this was a blast. Yeah.
Any closing thoughts here?
Well, thank you for having me on. I think it is good for dialogue because the thing is, we kind of came into when I came into this, I thought, are we just going to be like flatly disagreeing over the value of She-Ra? We really didn't disagree that much on the principles of the matter. So it's almost like the act of talking with a person, it prevents, you know, bad misunderstandings like can occur on Twitter. So thank you for hosting a dialogue, and I'm looking forward to more such dialogues in the future.
Well, I'm looking forward to the same thing. I know that you sent some of your friends my way, and I'm hoping they'll hit me up sometime soon, and we can talk all about old 80s cartoons and why I think they're amazing as they sit there and wonder when the old man's going to shut up.
Yeah.
All right, so everybody, this is #1 Marmaduke Fan. You should check out his channel if you like them thar comic books. And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you guys later.
Catch you later. I love you guys.